This is, can you believe it? We believe that all truth is God's truth, whether that truth is found in the social sciences or mathematics or nuclear physics or nature. All truth is God's truth, for God is truth. Our commitment to you is to go deep. We take a deep dive into the depths of the ocean floor, and under that intense pressure, scoop that fine sand from the bottom, bring it up to the surface for inspection, and report the truth as it is. That is, minus the emotions. This is episode number 3 of How Did We Get Here? When it comes to the issue of race, we argue that we are all created equal and that there are no humans who are created greater in essence and in their nature than any other. In fact, we affirm to the words found in the American Declaration of Independence statement, the statement that goes like this: we hold these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among this are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right from there, that particular statement there, I'm so glad that the far left liberals have not been able to alter that statement to remove or eliminate the words creator or created from that particular statement. But hey, the statement holds to be true today. Therefore, no matter how you slice or serve the issue of race and racism, the bottom line is this: it's still the same old baloney. The science behind the issue of race is nothing but a selfish agenda that cannot be backed by real science. As we shall see, that we humans, male and female, are created in the likeness and in the image of God. It is therefore faulty to make conclusions based on our inabilities or excuses or inadequacies. Just because we cannot explain the science behind the subject of origins or the metaphysical or the intelligent design behind life, we cannot make assumptions and conclusions that may claim to be scientific, but in actuality, those conclusions may be faulty. On the other hand, just because we do not understand the way science operates, we cannot form conclusions from a metaphysical perspective that leads us to say, just because we do not understand, God must have done it. Both of those perspectives, those two conclusions are wrong. I do believe that when properly understood, the study of science and theology should not contradict each other. If properly understood, science and theology do not contradict, and you can quote me on that one. Here's the fact of the matter: we do not originate from salmonella or from some form of amoebas somewhere in a pond. Life is too complex for that kind of scientific garbage. We have been looking at a subject that reveals a part of our human nature that needs transformation. It's the selfishness and the greed of humanity that is evident in almost all of us. No, no, in all of us. It has been said that if mankind is not checked, we will enslave our own brothers and sisters. That's how evil we are. We are born with an evil nature and a slate that's not clean enough. We are tainted and often tend to look out for number one, me and myself alone. During the last episode, we established that racism has caused a lot of pain to a lot of people over the years and still continues to do so, and to bring a lot of injustice to the sons and daughters of mankind. We established that racism is rooted in selfishness and in greed, and that modern science does not support the divisions of race, whether in the West, East, or Africa, and that race is nothing more but a myth. Today, I want us to dig a little bit deeper and critically think about the issues and the teachings and the philosophy of a gentleman, if you can afford to call him a gentleman, by the name of Richard Hopkins. In 1794, Richard Popkin, Popkin, wrote a paper on the history of racism in Western Europe and in the United States that focused on the period beginning with the Spanish Inquisition of the 14th, or rather 15th, to the 17th century. Popkin argued that there were two major themes or ideologies that contributed to the impurity of racism. And he named the first theory or ideology as the pre Adamite ideology, and the second ideology, he referred to it as the degenerate view of human racial variations. There you go. Two ideologies, the pre Adamite, those who were created before Adam and Eve were created. I'll speak more about this in the coming episode. And then the degenerates, a view of humans, humans who are not really humans because they were subhuman and did not have capabilities to make moral and ethical decisions. So decisions had to be made for them by those who were maybe thought of to be better off. Well, by the way, Richard Popkin was doing this just before Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution and the origin of species came to play in 1851. It's been a while, but if you consider it, it's not been that long. But let's dig a little bit deeper into Popkin's background and the history of race during this time or his time and what might have made him make this conclusion. Some of us may know that in the early biblical times, the Hebrews and the Greeks, for instance, allowed lesser popular groups to overcome what might have been seen as alleged inferiority by allowing people to convert into the dominant groups through the process of assimilation. This is why we read of Hellenistic Jews or Hellenistic Judaism, which was the designation for the practice of Judaism in the Greek speaking world. This included those Jews who spoke Greek and adapted to some extent a Greek way of life. They were assimilated into the Greeks. The Greeks also allowed those people that they branded as barbarians to learn to speak and to write and to think as the Greeks and the Stoics and the Epicureans. They wanted to be referred to as some people. That means they were assimilated from lesser, or rather into the larger group, again, of the elites. In the 15th century, however, the Spanish introduced a new form of racism in order to squash this larger and the rising number of Jews who had been forced to convert to Catholicism. And therefore, those who were considered as old Christians were separated from the newbies, or from the new ones. Those who followed were considered new Christians on biological grounds. So the teachings of Spanish Inquisitionists argue that anyone who possessed Jewish ancestry in the past 5 generations from the 15th century was considered to be a new Christian and therefore subject to a number of restrictions, including the inability to go to college, join a religious order, or hold a government position of the day. So, you see how it began? Certificates of the purity of blood were being issued by the Spanish Inquisitionists to those who were considered or defined within the parameters of non-Jews with the purpose of proving that an individual did not belong. The Spanish Inquisition was established to ensure that those of Jewish ancestry were kept apart and out of the mainstream society. Man, this is selfish and goes way back. We are talking about the 14th, 15th century, and Popkin's philosophy and teaching coming up in the 17th century begins to spearhead this subtle division among the sons and the daughters of men by then. Although this inquisition was directed towards the Jews, the Inquisition also focused on Christianized Muslims and gypsies, and later moved to Asia and to America, where it targeted the indigenous people. You ask, who were the gypsies? Well, the gypsies are the Roma people originated in the Punjab region of northern India as a nomadic people group, and they entered Europe between the 8th and the 10th centuries. They were called gypsies because some Europeans mistakenly, and mistakenly is the operative word here, believed that these gypsies came from Egypt in Africa. Of course, where else could they have come from? The gypsies were considered to be dirty and deceitful and too lazy to work. And based on the teachings of Richard Hopkins and his philosophy of the day, the existence of a people whom he called the pre-Adamites and the degenerates class of humans began or were existing and needed to be acknowledged and set aside or separated from the rest of society. Now, we have to understand that the Spanish Inquisition was formally established around the 1470s, 1400s, and therefore moved to Rome, and in the 16th century moved into the Roman world, where it expanded to include, or should I say, to seclude also those who are considered to be Protestants, the sexually degenerate, those accused of witchcraft, the free thinkers and public intellectuals of the day. So if you had a different opinion that contradicted with those in power, you are considered to be a threat. The Spanish Inquisition of the 14th to the 17th century did not focus on religion alone, but also expanded to include other categories like ethnicity and race, and the introduction of the notion of limpieza de sangre, or the impurity of blood. You see how the science is being pushed into the mix here. This is not to argue that evil and selfishness and greed did not exist before the 14th century, by the way, but what was different in this era is that race received a different color. It was not systemized or categorized and officially, seen as a bad thing. Slowly but surely, however, it was used as a means of discriminating against others. Racism was philosophized. It was made to look academic and to have a scientific background to it. It was coded as a truthful science. It was seconded by the academia and acknowledged and taught as a tenet of truth and accepted as credible science, even though it's not. We shall learn more regarding this higher institutions of learning in America and in Europe that supported racism in the near future here. But we know that this racism took a new feature in the 1400s, and it was about the class of people rather than just categories of belief. It was run by those in power, the political class, the educated, the elite, and the wealthy. They wanted to control and to have authority over others. Racism in the 1400s became a political thing. It was founded on religion as well, and a new ideology that was rooted in the science of the day. And therefore, Popkin comes up with this theory of the pre-Adamites and the degenerates. Even worse, the concept of race and ethnicity was ruled and defined by the state, as we shall see. I will also define the pre-Adamites a little bit deeper and the degenerates in the next episode. If you are minority or classified as the conquered people, one could not change that identity or convert or assimilate into the mainstream of society. It was like the classism or the caste system of India that we see today. Another sad story in the development of humankind. But here's the kicker in the propagation of all this evil and the fake science. Although these discriminating practices began as a result of economic and political conditions, we find a new threat hidden in academia, in the philosophies, and even in the study of medicine. We all bleed red, but the science of the 1500s and the maybe to the 19th century was made to read otherwise. The science theories of the day, like this one we are looking at today, or we're discussing by Richard Hopkins, began to be used as a justification for racism. These scientific theories uh, again began to appear in Spain and in Portugal in the 14th century. And after the discovery, well, the discovery of the Americas, the Spanish Inquisitionists, for that matter, once again used the science as a tool to expand their colonization and to justify similar racist ideas towards the Native Americans, the Asians, and later to abduct them, to transport from their homelands, and to enslave the Africans. It is interesting to note that Columbus's voyage to America and the discovery of Americans, or rather the Americas, happened at the peak of the Spanish Inquisition. We can therefore historically argue that the initial cause of anti-Semitism in Spain and in Portugal may have been due to the jealousy and the power and the wealth and the influence that some of the Jewish people possessed. Some reached deep into personal emotions and used false religions and historical and biological arguments, using even the Bible to make faulty conclusions that the Jewish people were responsible for the death of Christ, and therefore they were eternal enemies of Christianity. A statement that is not founded in history or in the Bible. So, as the Spanish and the Portuguese expanded their colonization of new lands and from continent to continent, new rationalizations had to be made to justify the mistreatment of the local people. And alongside these mistreatments were new false scientific and lame theories that were formed to explain and to cover the conscience and the guilt of the concerned. According to Hopkins' research in 1774, two major theories emerged. Theories that became prominent, allowing those who are wicked people and corrupt people to stay in power. These theories included the pre-Adamite and the degenerate theories of degenerate people, which we shall cover in episode number 4. This is, can you believe it? We believe that all truth is God's truth, whether that truth is found in social sciences and mathematics, physics, or chemistry. And our premise is founded on the basis that all truth is God's truth, because God is truth. And our responsibility is to find that truth, search for it, wherever it may be found, analyze it, and share it with the creatures of the earth, big and small, those who find themselves in this God's green earth. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to keep you informed on these crucial issues that affect your life, issues from our history. Don't forget to subscribe to be informed on issues that make a difference today. Remember, when it comes to racism, we argue that no matter how you slice it, no matter how you serve it, it's still the same old baloney. This is, can you believe it? Thank you.